This episode's going to be very practical, so pay attention. This will change your life right here. This one simple idea. The idea is, I want you to notice that there is a category or class of things which can be achieved in your life only through a slow, steady, consistent investment into that thing over a period of years on a daily basis. That's it. That's the entire notion. If you grok this notion will change your whole life. This is so significant. I'll share a lot of examples here to illustrate what exactly this notion means. But again, what I'm saying is that there are certain things that you can accomplish in your life only if you invest on a daily basis, every single day, for years, a little bit at a time, which ultimately accretes to some amazing result that you cannot get any other way. You cannot purchase it, and you cannot build it overnight. And there is no magic pill you can take that will leapfrog that process for you the way that everybody wants. And in a sense, this is the ultimate key to success in life, is to realize this notion that I'm talking about, to realize how significant it is, and to realize that the most valuable things in life are those things which are built in this fashion, through long-term investing in yourself. And they cannot be gotten any other way. And the key mistake that most fools in life make, go see my episode, What is Wisdom?, where I explain technically what a fool is. What I explain in that episode is that fools are impatient people. That's one of the characteristics of a fool. A fool wants something very valuable, very cheaply and quickly. A fool doesn't want to work for it. A fool can be convinced that something highly valuable in life can be gotten without this process of patient, steady investment. So one of the areas in life where the biggest fools are caught into serious and painful traps is when it comes to investing. And I mean just financial investing, like on Wall Street. See, fools want to get rich quickly. The wise want to get rich slowly. Because if you get rich quickly, you're going to lose that richness very fast. Whereas if you get rich slowly, you're going to be able to solidify that and build upon it, and it's going to be solid like granite. And another thing that I said about fools is that fools build their castles on foundations of sand. The fool is more interested in the castle than the foundation. They don't dig a deep enough foundation and their castle collapses. They can't build their castle very high. And then they're constantly working because their foundation is constantly sinking. And so they spend their whole life redoing things over and over and over again. Like they chase get-rich-quick scheme after get-rich-quick scheme after get-rich-quick scheme, and they keep failing and failing and failing, thinking that one of these schemes one day will make them super rich and will allow them to live the easy life. Whereas it would have been just easier to bite the bullet and just actually work hard, slowly, patiently for a decade or so, and then you can actually build up some serious wealth that way. But when you're just chasing, easy opportunities, then you're not actually going to become successful. That's what the fool doesn't understand. It's a trap. The fool doesn't see the trap. So the point here is to help you to adopt a sort of life philosophy and attitude of patience, of investing in yourself and building up yourself and your life and those aspects of your life that are most important to you slowly, patiently over years and decades. And this is how you will make yourself successful. This is how you will make yourself deeply satisfied and happy in life. And only in this way. And to resist the temptation for shortcuts and to resist the temptation to try to outsource this to somebody else. This is your primary responsibility. This is why you're alive, is to do this. This is the heart of self-actualization and personal development. So now let's get into some examples to illustrate what I mean. So what's one example of something that can only be developed over a long period of time, working on it very consistently and patiently? Well, one example would be education. If you care about education, if you care about understanding the world, if you care about knowledge, if you want to be intelligent and smart, this is not something you can go and purchase off a store shelf. There is no amount of money that will make you well educated. Now, of course, money helps. It helps to have money in this process, but it's not going to do it for you. Nor can you get educated in a weekend or even in a single year. There is no thing that you can do this weekend that will make you well educated. To become well educated, if you're serious about it, what that means is that you're going to be investing in your education, time and energy mostly, every single day for a period of decades. There is no single book you can read that will make you well educated. There's no single class you can go to. There is no even university program that you can go to that will make you well educated. That's not going to be sufficient. To be well educated is such a big thing, but it's also a rather sort of nebulous and abstract thing. After all, what does it mean to be well educated? It's hard to even define what that means. To me, it means a lot more than just having a degree or going to a class. A solid education requires thousands of hours of investment. So, how do you become really well educated? You read every single day, and you do it for decades. And you listen to podcasts or to videos, and you listen to lectures, and you contemplate, and you take notes, and then you read some more, and you go to classes, and maybe you go to school, maybe you go to university, and then that's not enough. You continue after that as well. It's a sort of commitment to lifelong learning. And you keep doing that for a long time, and then at some point you become very well educated. But it's going to take thousands of hours. And nobody is going to do it for you. You can't outsource it to anybody. And nobody is going to push you, really, to become very well educated. Sure, your parents might push you to get good grades, or they might push you to go to university and to get a degree. But that is not the same thing as being well educated. And even your teachers will push you to do your homework assignments, and they may push you to study or cram for an exam, and they may even inspire you or push you to learn some field or some aspect of a field if you have a good teacher. But a teacher is not going to really be there holding your hand and guiding you towards becoming a well-educated human. That's something only you can do on your own if you develop that vision and then you work towards it every single day. And if you don't work towards it every single day, then you won't become well-educated. And then you will see other people in the world who are well-educated. Now, granted, it's rare to find a really well-educated person, but they exist. They're not that rare. You will see those people and you will look at their results in life and you will envy their results. You will want their results. And you will wonder, how lucky that these people are so smart or so intelligent or so well-educated. How do I become that way? And you're going to look for a shortcut. Like, what book can I read? Tell me the magic secret. Well, the magic secret was 2 or 3 decades of constant daily contemplation, reading, studying, note-taking, doing it over and over and over and over again. And see, but you don't want to hear that because now you've wasted 20, 30 years of your life, whatever you were doing, not investing in your education. And now you want the end result. You want to find some way to buy it or to outsource it or to get it quickly. And of course, the answer is you can't. That's exactly why being well-educated is so valuable. It's worth so much. So the real answer was for you to travel back in time and to invest 20, 30 years of your life becoming really well-educated. Of course, you can't do that. Now, maybe you're still young enough that you've got another 20, 30 years of your life left, and you can invest that time to become well-educated. But will you? See, it's going to be harder now because you're going to feel like you're behind the curve, and you are, of course. You're going to feel like you've wasted a lot of your time. And of course you did. You didn't invest. And also, you see, the earlier you invest, the greater chance of compounding returns on your investment. So somebody who invests 30 years into becoming well-educated at the beginning of his life, that person is going to get much more benefit from that investment than somebody who invests 30 years towards the end of his life. Because the whole key with this sort of investing strategy that we're talking about, investing in yourself, is that you spend 10, 20, 30 years building up something. You build it up, you become really well-educated. Now, of course, you don't stop, you can keep doing it, but basically then after a certain number of decades, you can coast off of that success for the rest of your life. It pays dividends forever. That's the beauty of it. That's why you want to get it done as quickly, as early as possible. You want to start investing as early as possible. The longer you wait, the less payoff there's going to be. Now, that shouldn't discourage you from, investing at all. It's better to be late than never, but it's better to be early than late. There's this popular sort of cliched adage in software development where they say that, if you have 10 women, you can't make a baby in 9 weeks. It still takes 9 months. What this means is that there are certain things in life that have sort of a natural developmental process that takes a certain amount of time. No matter how many women you get together and how hard you tell them to work, they're not going to produce a baby faster than 9 months. Now, this kind of course, seems obvious, but a lot of times we fool ourselves into thinking that we can get something done faster by pushing it, or by funneling more resources into it. Sometimes that's the case. but not always. Certain things in life, like if you're trying to build a house, if you have one person building that house, one worker, that house, let's say, will take 3 years to complete. If you have 2 people, it's probably going to take 1.5 years to complete. If you have 3 workers working on it, you can probably do it in a year. If you have 4, you can do it like in 8 months. And so it makes sense to put more people on the problem. But after a certain point, there's going to be diminishing returns, simply because if you have too many people working on a small house, there's going to be too much interference. So if you take 100 people to work on, a single family home, you might say, well, we can get it done in a day, right? No, you can't. Maybe on a calculator, you could do the math and you can kind of keep, adding people and keep subtracting days, and you can actually, on your calculator, get to a point where you think you can get a house built in 1 day, but you can't. Because there's all sorts of overhead costs, It takes time to deliver the lumber. It takes time to move things around. There's sort of friction between different people on the workplace. If you have 10 people working together, that might be optimal for a single family home. If you have 100 people, that's no longer optimal. And if you have 1,000 people, it's going to be worse than having 10. So why am I telling you this? Because your mind is going to want to trick you to try to take these sorts of shortcuts. So another example is in the area of business. Or another way to put it is building a brand. Building a high-quality brand is not something you can do overnight. And it's not even something you can do in a year. Building a brand is a decades-long process or more of gradual investment into your brand, whatever the brand is. Patiently building a reputation in the marketplace of high quality products or services that you're offering, honing your brand to making sure that it's fitting within a certain narrow niche within your marketplace and serving that niche very, very well. And just even for yourself as a business person who is running that brand, even for yourself to identify exactly what your brand is and isn't, you might say, well, that's just kind of theory. You should be able to just sit down and do that. No, that actually takes you decades of work to do, to really hone your brand and to understand what it is exactly you're selling and who you're selling it to, and what is part of your brand, what's not part of your brand. And this leads to something very valuable in the end if you go through this whole process over a period of a decade or more and do this. Because most business people are so concerned about just returning a quarterly profit that they're not deeply investing in their brand. And in fact, a lot of times they cannibalize their own brand in order to extract profits. A lot of the giant companies fall prey to this. Usually what happens in a company's development cycle, or even in a brand's development cycle, is that initially there's some sort of visionary founder who works really hard to build up the brand in the first 10 years. Then that brand is built up and it gains a loyal following, a fanatical following from its customers, because that visionary produced something and really cared about the brand and was really interested in customer service and delivering the highest quality product or service. And that elevated that business and that brand above all the others. Then once that brand became well established, usually it's sold off to some giant corporation who then milks that brand and then exploits all the loyal customers, screwing them over by delivering inferior products. Right? This is how most modern business works. There are a few exceptions. Like, for example, think of the brand like Nintendo. Nintendo is an old company. Nintendo's over 100 years old. It used to be a trading card company back in Japan in the old days before the war and so forth. And then it turned into arcade games and video games. But Nintendo has spent decade after decade cultivating this massive brand of iconic characters, iconic names, iconic games, and they just do it consistently over and over and over and over again. And that's what makes Nintendo a multi-billion-dollar brand. You can't build something like that overnight. And it takes a real commitment and vision and a very patient approach to what you're doing and consistency on a daily basis. Building and building inch by inch by inch by inch that brand. See, we have this attitude, and the more foolish you are, the more you have this attitude of wanting some big result quickly. Like, Leo, tell me what I could do to become enlightened tomorrow. Or, Leo, what can I do to break out of wage slavery tomorrow or by the end of the year? And something like enlightenment or something like breaking free of wage slavery and becoming totally financially independent, these would be two more examples of things that you cannot just buy or outsource or get done very quickly without being patient about it. These are things that require long-term, consistent investment. This means you have to have a vision, you have to have a plan, you have to follow through on that plan, you have to be very disciplined about it every single day, chipping away at it, and you have to be very patient. And then you can achieve a result like being totally financially independent. And then you can bask in that result and you can enjoy that result for the rest of your life. For example, I quit a relatively well-paying career in video game development in order to go off and become financially independent, to break free of wage slavery. Because to me, I perceive that as one of the most important pillars of my life. I knew early on, when I got my first job out of university, I knew early on that there was nothing more important in my life than to become free of wage slavery. And so when I understood the value of that, I was willing to do anything to make it happen. So I even quit a great career that I was planning my whole life. I quit that because this was such an important thing for me to develop. And then I invested in it patiently over months and years. And then today, I'm free of wage slavery. And I probably will be for the rest of my life. And I can coast on that. And it's such a rewarding aspect of my existence that most humans will never experience. And to me, that's very sad. Because I know a lot of people would love to experience it. Wouldn't you love to be free of wage slavery for the rest of your life? How do you achieve a result like that? Well, I can't give you the exact step-by-step formula. You have to figure out the minutia of it for yourself, because this is not a scalable solution. Not everyone can be free of wage slavery. So you have to be very creative and clever about how you go about it. But the biggest mistake that I see people making who try to do it and fail, and most of them fail, is because they're not patient enough. And they're not willing to invest long-term, bit by bit by bit by bit over a period of years and decades to do this. They're not patient enough to build a brand or to build a really solid business. Instead, they're looking for a shortcut. They're looking at cryptocurrency or the latest fad, or they're jumping on this, or, oh, podcasts are popular today, let me go make a podcast. It's like, oh, YouTube is popular, let me go onto YouTube. This kind of stuff. And with this sort of attitude, when you're just chasing and you're just desperate for some result and you want it quickly, you're not willing to work for it. See, when you're not willing to work for it and you want it quickly, what that really reveals about your attitude and your mind is that you don't truly appreciate the value of the ultimate goal. Because if you really appreciated the value of being free of wage slavery, you would be happy to work for 10 years to do it, to achieve it. But see, most people, you tell them, well, I can show you how you can break free of wage slavery, but it'll require 10 years of consistent daily work. Are you going to do it? And they'll say, oh, well, 10 years, that sounds hard. And they won't do it. And then, of course, what's the surprise? Of course, then they're going to be wage slaves. But see, to me, the idea of being free of wage slavery was so valuable. It had almost infinite value in my mind, because the way I thought about it was like this. If I can have complete financial independence, I could be completely free creatively to do whatever I want creatively. And to me, as a creative person, that was the most valuable thing. I could be completely creatively autonomous. I wouldn't have to have a boss. I wouldn't have to listen to customers. I wouldn't have to listen to anybody. I could literally work on any kind of project that I want. If I want to make a game, I can make a game. If I want to make a movie, I can make a movie. If I want to pursue awakening, I can pursue awakening. Whatever I want, I could literally do. Now, what's the value of that to you versus what's the value of that to me? To me, the value of that is infinite. You can't put a price tag on how valuable that is. To be free of a work schedule, to be able to sleep and wake up whenever I want, to be able to work whenever I want, to be able to take a vacation whenever I want. I could take half a year off whenever I want. I could not work for 5 years and then come back and still be fine. See, that kind of freedom, what is that freedom worth to you? Most people undervalue that freedom. They might say, well, that's worth $1 million. But actually, it's worth way more than $1 million. What you can do with that freedom is worth hundreds of millions of dollars if you use it properly. Now, of course, most people would piss that freedom away. So if you're going to piss it away, maybe it's only worth $50,000 to you if you're going to do nothing but play video games and smoke weed and jerk off with that freedom. But to somebody who really has their shit together, that freedom is worth so much. And then, depending on how much you value it and how much it's worth to you, that determines how hard you're going to work towards it. How patient you're going to be with it. Another example for you is with Actualized.org. That's my brand, Actualized.org. See, when I began Actualized.org 8 years ago, my vision for it was very advanced from the very beginning. My vision for it was that I was going to cover profound topics about the nature of reality and the mind and psychology and epistemology and metaphysics and philosophy and spirituality. Like, I had all this planned from the very beginning, although I didn't know all the details of it. But I had a huge vision for it, and I knew that it was going to take me years and maybe even a decade to build up this catalog of content and videos that would all interconnect together. Every episode would interconnect with every other episode, synergizing and doubling its value. See, if one of my episodes has X number of value to you or to anybody, when you then link it with a second episode, it doubles its value. When you link it with a third, it doubles its value again. And in this way, its value compounds. So when you link hundreds of them together, what you get by linking hundreds of them together is much more than just a linear sum of every episode in isolation. Because what we're doing here is we're building this big picture that's very deep and interconnected. And the more interconnections you have these sort of network effects like you get with a social network, like with Facebook. These network effects are nonlinear, which means that if you have 10 people on Facebook, only 10 people, Facebook is not very valuable. When you have 100,000 people, it's more interesting. Now you got something going. Now you've got a little bit of a network effect. You've got friends and acquaintances, interesting stuff is being shared with 100,000 people, but still, it's very limited. When you got 1 million people, now it gets really interesting. Now, when you got 1 billion people, that's a whole new ballgame. When you have the entire world on Facebook. So you need to be good at sort of spotting these nonlinear payoffs that you can get with your investments. So that's sort of what the Actualized brand is built upon. And the videos are all supposed to interconnect in a very profound way for those who want to interconnect them all, who are willing to watch them all. And that will produce a certain effect on your mind, and it will produce a sort of level of personal development that you can't get from reading any self-help book or from any other single self-help teacher. And we're interconnecting so many different kinds of perspectives, scientific perspectives and spiritual perspectives and religious perspectives and philosophical perspective and all these different people and models, and we're interconnecting. That produces something that's way more than the sum of its parts. And see, I had that vision 10 years ago. But every episode that I was releasing in the early years was not actually delivering on that result. You see, my early episodes were not very deep, were not very profound. I didn't even have the skills, the speaking skills, or even the intellectual skills developed yet to be able to talk about and interconnect all of the profound stuff that I talk about now. It took me a good 8 years to develop this capacity. And that is now something deeply valuable. See, this is one of those things that's sort of abstract, but it's profoundly valuable that you cannot buy or get anywhere else. It's something truly unique that had to be built over a period of a decade. And that turns into a unique selling proposition that then I can sell to you. And then I can get value back from you. See? But to give you value, to get value from you, first I have to give you a lot of value. To give you a lot of value, I have to generate that value somehow. How did I generate that value? Very, very patiently building it out over years. And it was very frustrating at the very beginning because I had this idea of all the amazing content I was going to shoot and release. But I couldn't do it yet because I didn't have the skills. I didn't have the intellectual capacity yet. I didn't have the levels of consciousness yet. I didn't even have the speaking abilities yet to do that. All that had to be built over time. My own mind had to be built over time. But see, the one thing that allowed me to do that is that I saw the value of it. I had enough vision to see the value of it and to work towards it on a weekly basis. And that's what I did. I basically have been recording videos, these kinds of videos, every single week for the last 8 or 9 years of my life. Very consistently. But it's more than just recording videos. It's also, I spend even more time just constantly thinking about how to interconnect all these ideas in my own mind, organizing different topics for what I'm going to cover, what kind of videos I'm going to shoot, creating lists. I have lists of hundreds of videos that I'm simultaneously working on, that I'm brainstorming on. I've been brainstorming on them for years. And then from there, I can then pull out a topic, create a video, release it to you, and it seems, maybe to you, it seems like, oh, this is something Leo just did over the weekend. It seems that way. Actually, this is something Leo's been doing for a decade. And that makes it much more powerful than some YouTuber just saying like, oh, let me just record some video. I just had an idea yesterday. Let me just record a video about it today. You can do that, but you're not going to get the same kind of depth. And then how are you going to compete? And I mean, you can. There's a lot of shallow shit on YouTube, so you can certainly compete that way. I'm not saying you can't, but I'm just saying that you won't be able to develop something like what I've developed as a brand with Actualized.org. If you want to develop a really powerful brand, you got to be thinking about it 10 years into the future and then chipping away at that so that each video you're releasing is not just a standalone video. Yes, it can stand on its own. Any one of my videos can stand on its own. But the real power of the videos is when you combine them all together, when you string 100 of them together, what you get is much more than the sum of its parts. Now, don't get hung up on just the fact that I'm talking about making YouTube videos. I'm really not. I'm giving you a specific example about a much more abstract principle here. You can apply this in any kind of business that you're working on. If you want to be building a powerful business, this is how you got to think. You got to think long-term, you got to think strategically, and you got to think in terms of how are every little piece and product and service that you're combining together or releasing on a weekly, monthly basis, how are those all going to add up to something that's larger than some of its parts? That's where you get the network effects. That's where you get exponential value. And then that's where you can build a lot of wealth and also make a huge impact on the world if that's what you care about. See, for me, I was never in this for the wealth. I didn't start a YouTube channel because I said, oh, everyone's starting YouTube channels and I want to get rich doing it. No, for me, it was about the impact that I saw that I could have on people, on people's minds. And related to that is another thing that I've been developing, which is even more important to me than my brand and this business or this channel. Really, see what I've been doing. I don't know if you realize this or not, but sort of the secret to what I've been doing over the last 10 or even longer, 20 years really, is that I've been developing one of the most robust and interconnected maps of reality that any human has ever developed. And I've been doing it inside my own mind. That means when I was reading a book, or when I was doing some philosophy, or when I was contemplating or meditating or whatever, taking a psychedelic, or watching a podcast, or watching an interview, or listening to some teacher, or going to some workshop, or whatever, reading a bit of self-help. All of those were little things I was doing, that could stand on their own, that could benefit me and improve my life a little bit. But really what I was doing is I was taking all those little pieces and I was combining them all together to figure out what the hell is going on in reality, making sense of everything. With the idea being that if I do this for 10 or to 20 years, I will have such a profound and deep understanding of how reality works that this will be like a superpower that I have that nobody else has. No scientist has this, no doctor has this. Even a lot of spiritual people don't have this. Because the way they do spirituality is not with that kind of intention. They're doing spirituality for some sort of shallow, singular goal. Like they want to feel happy, or they want to escape suffering or pain, or they want to just awaken and all they care about is just awakening and nothing else. Or they just want to be a Buddhist and they just follow the Buddhist path and nothing else. They only care about understanding Buddhism and nothing else. You see, this produces a very narrow understanding of reality, and it's not the same thing as what I'm talking about. So I've spent the last 10 years or more integrating literally hundreds of different perspectives, interconnecting them in my own mind, from scientists to New Agers to religious people to political ideologies and, social sciences, hard sciences, psychology, philosophy, non-duality, sociology, developmental psychology, spiral dynamics, chaos theory, fractals, quantum mechanics, evolutionary theory, interconnecting all that stuff. And my hunch was behind all this that if I was able to integrate all this stuff together, that I would get something that's more than just the sum of its parts. It would be more than just having a PhD or a diploma. It would be more than just having a career as a scientist or as a philosopher. It would be more than just reading a list of books. It would be way more than all that. And that this would be extremely valuable. Both to me personally, just for living my own life in a better way, but it would be extremely valuable in sharing that with others like you. It would be worth millions of dollars. And so that's exactly what I've been doing over the last 10 years of my life. You see, rather than investing in Bitcoins, although I have a little bit of Bitcoins, full disclosure, but rather than, chasing after Bitcoins or chasing after stocks or chasing after money or chasing after podcast success or YouTube success, really what I've been doing is I've been investing in the most important and valuable thing that I have, which is building my mind. See, in this mind is literally contained one of the most sophisticated understandings of the entire universe that exists on this planet. Now, that might sound narcissistic and arrogant to say that, but I put it so starkly because that was my vision. I tend to have pretty high visions. When I do something, I can't really motivate myself to do it unless I think that it's really awesome to do. That means it has to be like a really awesome achievement. It has to be something really amazing, rare, unique, and powerful. Otherwise, to me, it's not worth doing. And see, nobody in society will tell you that this is something you should be doing or that this would be valuable to do. In fact, most people will tell you that this is foolish to do. It's a waste of time. And I've had a lot of people tell me to stop doing it. On a daily basis, people tell me to stop doing it. But that's what it takes to really accomplish something amazing in the world, is that you have to keep doing it despite all the naysayers. You keep doing it and doing it and doing it every single day, pushing towards your vision, because you feel that it's going to be something significant and something important. And you don't look to external validation to tell you that what you're doing is right. You have to look within. Your intuition, your higher self will tell you if what you're doing is right. And I'm not done with my project. There's still a lot more of this project going on. I still have a lot more to understand and to interconnect. And so my idea was that if I was going to interconnect more and more different perspectives, that eventually this would lead to something extraordinary. And you see, this is one of those things that is so abstract, like even to get this idea, imagine getting this idea in your mind, what I was just describing, and then to actually work on it every single day for 10 or 20 years. With no external validation. That means you can't go to your parents and ask them, hey, should I do this? Is it a good idea? Because if you ask them, they'll tell you, no, it's stupid. That's what they'll tell you. So this requires a certain independence and a leadership quality to do this, and vision, and then patience, and then doing it every single day consistently, a little bit. And then telling yourself every single day that by doing this, you're working towards something important and not to quit. And that it's going to be worthwhile. Because you're going to have days where you're doubting yourself. You're going to have weeks where you want to quit. And just go follow all of your friends and do all the stupid stuff that they're doing. Or somebody's going to criticize you, or somebody's going to naysay you, and then you're going to take that criticism and injunction to quit you're going to let it get to you, and then you're going to want to quit. And you got to push past that and hold tight to your vision. See, this is what creates the most significant kinds of success in life. Your ability to do that. Now, I'm just giving you examples from my own life. I'm not saying you have to do this. I'm not saying this is what you need to be doing. Maybe you don't. Maybe you have the kind of mind that doesn't want this or doesn't need this, or maybe you have a different priority in your life. That's fine. Don't get hung up on the details. So one of the things that really juices me up and gets me, one of the secrets, I guess I could say, behind the passion that I have for life is that intuitively I'm always making these kinds of investments in my own self. And after years of doing this, it becomes very rewarding. This is how you create a deep sense of meaning in your life. Whether you're doing it with your business or with your family or with your spiritual work or with your education or your mindset or your understanding of reality, whatever you're doing it with. This kind of patient investing in that which you intuit is going to be deeply valuable, based upon your own values, not the values of somebody else. What's another example of this? For example, of course, we're gonna get to spirituality here in a moment, but before we get to that, how about just something more simple like emotional mastery? Hopefully you can intuit as early as possible in your life that emotional mastery, the development of emotional mastery, is going to pay dividends for the rest of your life if you can develop it. And the faster you can develop it, the better. But also you should see that developing emotional mastery is difficult. You can't master your emotions overnight or even in a year. This requires a lot of deep introspection work, mindfulness work, dealing with your shadow stuff, dealing and facing fear and anger and jealousy, confronting these in an honest way, journaling about them, reading about how emotions work. This is a whole project. This project can take you 10, 20 years of your life. Perhaps practicing different methods like the Sedona method, letting go of emotions. Just even learning how to label your emotions. For example, when you're angry, learning to label, oh, that's anger. And when you're afraid, oh, that's fear. And when you're jealous, oh, that's jealousy. And when you're feeling guilty, oh, that's guilt. And then you can research and learn different coping mechanisms and different sorts of strategies for how to jujitsu with those different kinds of emotions. So like when you're angry, you can maybe learn the strategy of like, okay, let me just take a few deep breaths, pause and take a few deep breaths. Like that. Or maybe when you're afraid, you notice that your hands are tensing up and they're getting sweaty, or your leg muscles, your thigh muscles are tensing, or your gut is tensing. And maybe you even have a little bit of like irritable bowel syndrome from your fear, and then learning to let that go. You have to become mindful of it first, then you let it go. And maybe you learn some relaxation techniques. And then when you're sad or when you're depressed, learning some coping strategies for that. Like what do you do when you're stuck in a depression or you're stuck in a sort of a lazy, unmotivated state and a sort of an apathetic state, or when you're feeling nihilistic and you feel like nothing matters and everything is meaningless and maybe you even want to kill yourself. What do? See, see, most people have not developed any of this stuff. This is not taught to you in school, of course. And yet, think of how valuable it would be if you actually developed this kind of emotional mastery. Or with being happy. See? How do you be happy? Most people just are kind of winging it. They're doing stuff desperately to gain happiness, but it doesn't give them any happiness. All that happiness is fleeting. And yet they keep doing it over and over and again for the rest of their lives. And they're miserable and depressed when it doesn't work. So investing time researching what is happiness and then learning how to make yourself happy and how to maybe enjoy, how to be satisfied, building up that muscle, as I've talked about in my satisfaction meditation episode. That would be part of emotional mastery. You see, all of this would take you years and decades to develop. And you would have to work on it yourself, of your own initiative, because nobody's going to do this for you. You can't outsource it. And if you haven't developed this in the early part of your life, it's going to get harder to develop it later in life because you're going to build a lot of bad negative habits. You're going to build a lot of dysfunctional coping mechanisms for how to deal with your emotions. Then you're going to have double the work to unwire all those and then to wire in new ones in the future. So the earlier you do it, the better. And also, just it's going to pay dividends. You see, when you develop this emotional mastery, you're going to have the rest of your life to enjoy it, to enjoy a life that is not filled with a bunch of anxiety and panic attacks and fear and anger and jealousy and all this sorts of insecurity and victim mentality and bitterness and nihilism. So how much is emotional mastery worth to you? Is it worth $1 million? Is it worth $10 million? So how hard are you willing to work for it? Are you willing to work every single day for the next 20 years? Are you going to do it? See, this is what determines the difference between a high-quality person and a low-quality person. A high-quality person is one who is going to work for the next 20 years to develop it and actually will develop it. And then that is what contributes to the quality of that person. Whereas the low-quality person is going to be lazy, is going to slack off, is not going to be consistent, is going to do it for one weekend and then is going to quit and go play video games and go jerk off and go smoke weed and go party with friends and go have a bunch of sex and do the easy life. And then before you know it, 20, 30 years will pass in that person's life and they will be 40 years old, 50 years old, and they will have nothing to show for it because they've pissed away 40 years of their life down the path of least resistance. And they've invested nothing in themselves, and they have nothing to show for it. They don't have a house. They don't have a savings account. They don't have emotional mastery. They don't have any spiritual development. They don't have any education. They don't have any brand that they've built, any business that they've built. They don't have any skills that they've built that are highly valuable. They don't have any artistic or creative skills. They don't have any business skills. They don't have any marketing skills. They don't have any speaking skills. They don't even have a sense of humor. Because even something like a sense of humor is a great example of something that you have to build over years. I've spent years developing a sense of humor. If you think I lack a sense of humor, you should have seen me 10 years ago before I started shooting these videos. How shy and how serious I was, how humorless I was. I had to spend a lot of effort to develop my sense of humor, and I had to practice it on a daily basis. Sometimes on my forum, you see me cracking jokes or being humorous. Even in serious situations, I'll sometimes crack a joke. And sometimes people wonder, oh, Leo's being an asshole. Why is he doing that? Actually, what you don't understand is that I'm actually practicing my sense of humor. Developing that. Because I know that by the time that I'm 50 years old, I want to have like a really good sense of humor. And the only way I can get it is by practicing it for 10, 20 years in every chance that I can get. So if I see a chance to crack a joke, I'll take it. Now, I'm not saying I have an amazing sense of humor. I'm saying it's not about how good you are in some absolute sense. It's always relative to where you were in the past, right? So where I am today is 1,000% better than where I was 10 years ago. I'm not comparing myself to stand-up comedians. I'm comparing myself to where I was and also to where I want to be. And my journey's not done. There's still a lot of work I can do on my sense of humor. You see, but a lot of people, they take this approach of like, well, Leo, how do I become humorous? By the way, I have a video. I have a hour-long video that says how to be funny. It gives you my formula for how to become funny and develop a sense of humor. But how many of you will, first of all, sit through an hour of that, recognize the value of it to even sit through an hour of it? Most people, they wouldn't even value this topic enough to sit through an hour video explaining how to become humorous. That's a fail right there. But even then, at the end of that video, I give you a bunch of exercises that you should be doing every single day to develop your sense of humor. How many of you have done that for a year every single day? For even just 1 year straight? None of you. Almost none of you, I guarantee it. And then you come to me and say, oh, Leo, how do I be funny? Tell me how to be funny. You can't become funny overnight. Becoming funny requires retraining how your entire brain looks at reality. If you're a serious person, if you're a shy person who isn't very witty, isn't very playful with others socially, isn't really good at cracking jokes or being humorous, if that's your starting point, if your starting point is sort of a zero, it's going to take you years to change that. Now, some people are just more intuitively humorous, and then they don't need that much work. But most people, when they talk about how do I become more funny, they don't see the value of that. What is it worth to you to become more funny? Is it worth $1 million? Is it worth $10 million to you? If it isn't, you're a fool. You're underestimating the value of having a good sense of humor. You can use a good sense of humor to charm people, to charm women and men, to get laid. But not just to get laid, it's much more significant than that. You can use it to land a job. For example, at a job interview, if you have a great sense of humor and you're able to be charismatic and outgoing and kind of bubbly, at least for that hour or two of the job interview, you'll impress them so much they'll give you the job. And if you're a business person and you're doing business deals, having a great sense of humor could make the difference between closing a $10 million business deal or losing it. With a great sense of humor, you can develop a great social circle. With a great sense of humor, you can open doors that would be otherwise closed to you. You can charm all sorts of people. You can charm salespeople. With a great sense of humor, you can go into a used car dealership and you can buy a car for $1,000 cheaper than they would have sold it to you if you didn't have that sense of humor. And none of that even goes to say how it makes you feel on the inside when you have a sense of humor. I mean, it's just fun. Life just becomes more fun. Socializing becomes more fun. Going out with friends becomes more fun. Partying becomes more fun. Being with girls, if you're a guy, becomes more fun. You just enjoy your life more. What is that worth to you? So see, once you understand how valuable it is, then you won't whine and bitch and moan so much about investing a couple of years of your life working for maybe 20 minutes a day, developing your sense of humor by doing various kinds of exercises that you could be doing. You can't buy a sense of humor. You can't go to Walmart and buy a sense of humor. And you can't develop it in any kind of cheap or easy way. I literally had to reprogram how my mind thinks and sees situations in order to become more humorous. It's actually much more profound than most people realize. It's not about memorizing a bunch of jokes. It's about looking at the world in a playful manner. Anyways, if you find that valuable, then go check out that episode, How to Be Funny. Of course, we should now talk about the example of spiritual work. So, all of the biggest fruits of spiritual practice, such as enlightenment, awakening, or even just happiness, or a sense of liberation and freedom, or a sense of peace and tranquility, or maybe some emotional mastery that comes along with it as well, or shedding your suffering and your depression and your anxiety and your self-hatred and what other demons you have. Getting rid of your shadow, becoming more loving, accessing infinite love, accessing God, accessing higher intelligence, accessing profound wisdom from the universe that you couldn't access otherwise. Or even spiritual powers like cities, classic cities, yogic powers that could be developed. Even things like telepathy, clairvoyance, and so on, that many materialists don't even believe are possible. Healing powers and so forth. See, these are all the fruits of spiritual work that everybody would love to have immediately. Like if I published a course tomorrow that said how to have cities in one weekend, how to develop clairvoyance and omniscience and telepathy and all this in one weekend, or how to access infinite love in one weekend. I could sell 1 million copies of this course tomorrow. Everybody wants that. But of course, I'm not going to create a course like that because developing these powers and so forth and accessing these fruits of spiritual work, this takes decades of patient, consistent daily practice and self-investment rather than some sort of weekend course. If you're sitting there thinking like, oh man, but Leo, can't you release a course like that? I would love that. Tell me how to get these fruits from spiritual practice. Well, but that's what Actualized.org is. Actualized.org is that. The problem is that this is such a deep domain of work. It's so broad and deep simultaneously that you don't even realize that all these episodes that I'm releasing are helping to guide you towards that. And that if you actually would do the fucking work, you would maybe experience some of the fruits. See, are you willing to sit and meditate every single day for an hour or two for the next 10 years to develop some of these fruits? Most of you aren't, which is why you'll never get the fruits, which is why you keep watching my videos and you get no results. And you'll keep getting no results until you wise up and actually discipline yourself to do the practices that I have talked about many, many times that you stubbornly refuse to do because you're lazy and you just want the result and you don't want to work for it. What does accessing infinite love, what is that worth to you? Is it worth $5 million? What does becoming conscious of God, what is that worth to you? How about understanding the entire origin of existence? What is that worth to you? To most people, these things are worth nothing. And therefore, they're not willing to even expend a weekend working towards it. So then, is it a wonder that most people are spiritually bankrupt in our society? They are. Just like most people cannot invest 10 years building a brand in their business. They cannot discipline themselves or motivate themselves to spend 10 years building up their spiritual bank account. They're bankrupt. And then they want some quick solution, like how to be happy, how to find love, how to have a bunch of sex, how to be attractive, how to be masculine, how to get your health back. All of these things you can do, but these require serious long-term investment in yourself. There are no quick solutions for these things. Those things that have quick solutions, those solutions are already generally well known and you can buy them and you already have bought them. The most valuable stuff is the stuff that people haven't invented a mechanical solution for. There's no technology or gadget that will do this thing for you. You have to build it manually. That's precisely why it's worth so much. Because if you could just push a button and it would be solved in a weekend, it wouldn't be worth anything. And you would already have that. If there was some button you could push or some course you could take that would make you happy in one weekend, everybody would push that button and buy that course. And everybody would be happy already, you see? And if there was some button you could push that would make you enlightened, everybody in the world would already be enlightened. And if there was some video that I could release that would make you experience infinite love, then everybody in the world would already be filled with infinite love. And there would be no problems in the world. There would only be infinite love. So you have to be wise enough to see that what you really want in your life is always going to be walled off from you by your own willingness to exert the labor to get it. And so when you realize that, then you can actually get excited about doing labor. Because you realize that, in a certain sense, the more labor you put into something, you can almost get excited about it. Because the more you invest, the more you realize you're going to get back. Now, of course, you want to be smart about this. You don't want to be investing labor into some dead-end pursuit, thinking that it's going to pay off. You got to be investing in the right things. There are some things you can be investing in that will never pay off for you. And in fact, it'll backfire. So you got to be investing in the right things. But as long as you're investing in the right things in a smart way and you're doing it effectively, then you can get excited about the fact that you're investing in it. Like, for example, lately I've restarted my yoga practice. And with my yoga practice, I'm getting more mature and I'm seeing the value of the practice more and more as I develop myself. And like I'm more excited now than ever about doing my yoga practice because I realize that every hour I put into it, that is directly investing into my own consciousness a little bit, drop by drop by drop every single day. And it doesn't seem like a lot, a drop, imagine sort of an eyedropper. And you're dropping one little drop into a giant bathtub. It's an empty bathtub. And you're just walking in every single day and you're going drop, and then you're walking away. And then the next morning you're walking in there and going drop, and then you're walking away. And you're doing that every single day. Only one drop. See, most people would get very discouraged about this because they would see, like, they would look at the bathtub, they'd look how big it is, they would look at the little drop, they'd see how small it is, and they'd say, oh, this is hopeless, this is impossible. But to me, this can kind of be reframed. I like to reframe this in my mind to say, like, this is actually amazing because I know that everybody else is going to be discouraged by this process and is going to quit. And all I have to do is just keep doing drop by drop by drop by drop by drop every single day. And in 10 years, I'm going to be the only person with a full bathtub. And then people will wonder, how did your bathtub get full? What's the secret? Tell me the secret. How can I fill up my bathtub in one weekend? Well, you can't. Because all you have to work with is this little eyedropper. See, the human mind is a very stubborn beast. It takes years and decades to rewire your mind, how it works, its belief structures, and so forth. You can't change these things overnight. And so one of the mistakes people make, fools make, is that they undertake a strategy of a sort of a spasmodic, obsessive strategy of, like, what they will do is they will try to, they won't use the eyedropper. Instead, they'll get a giant bucket. And they'll take the bucket and they'll try to, throw a whole giant bucket into the bathtub all in one go. And then it's going to backfire on them. It's not going to work. Most of that water is going to spill back out, spill over them. It's going to make a giant mess. They're going to get discouraged by it and they're going to quit the next day. Whereas if you were just patient and you did drop by drop by drop very carefully every single day, very accurately, drop by drop by drop by drop, you would fill your bathtub. But, a fool isn't patient enough to do that. So the fool is just fumbling around and thinks he can just take in one day or in one weekend, he can just do something very rapidly that's going to change the whole situation. And it doesn't work that way because your mind, like I've talked about in the past in my ego backlash episode, is like a harmonic oscillator. It's an organic system. It's a nonlinear system. That means any change you make to your mind, like a pendulum, it swings back and forth. Or like a spring, you pull it back, you let it go. It does this. It does a sort of oscillating motion. That's how organic complex systems tend to work because they are homeostatic. So the human mind is like that. You can't achieve deep spiritual purification in one weekend or in one retreat. You have to do retreat after retreat after retreat after retreat after retreat after retreat after retreat. And then 10 years of that will radically change your mind. But on a daily basis and even on a weekly basis, you don't see the changes so much, and that's what can be discouraging. Most people, when they sit down to meditate, they're not sensitive enough to really feel the change that this makes. There's a change that it makes on a temporary basis, like on your temporary state for the next hour or for the next day. That's irrelevant. That comes and goes. But there's also a secondary change it makes at a deeper structural level of your mind where it purifies your mind a little bit, but only a tiny bit. Like every hour you meditate effectively, maybe it purifies your mind by 0.00001%. It's virtually imperceptible. It's like a little drop in the bathtub. And so it's easy to discount the value of that. We want some kind of magic pill that will give us like a 10% increase or a 20% increase in our consciousness or in our love or in our sense of humor or in our business. But usually that's not possible. Let alone a 200% increase. That's how these get-rich-quick schemes, they fool you. And even a lot of self-help teachers and seminars, they will fool you telling you, like, come to this workshop and we will teach you how to fix your marriage in a weekend or how to rid yourself of insecurity and social anxiety in a single weekend, or take this course and this will solve for you all your money problems or all of your problems with attracting women. And of course, none of these can deliver on that promise. And then you get discouraged by self-help. You just get discouraged by business courses. You get discouraged by all these books and other things you've read. But you know what? It's sort of your fault, because the reality is that these books and courses are marketed to people like you because you wouldn't buy a book or a course or a product or a service or a workshop or a seminar or whatever. You wouldn't buy it if the truth was told to you that it's going to take you 10 years to build this business. It's going to take you 10 years to achieve your awakening. It's going to take you 10 years to solve your social anxiety. Because you're a fool. And these courses and books and products are all targeted towards fools. Because there's not enough wise people to make a business. Gearing your business towards the wise is not very smart. It's if you want to make a lot of money, gear your business towards the biggest fools. So when it comes to spiritual work, this is where you require the most patience and the most maturity and the most strategic approach. And this is why most people have never felt the fruits of spiritual work. They don't even believe there are the fruits. Like many of the fruits that I talk about or promise, people will say that I'm crazy or that I'm a cult leader or that I'm imagining things or that I'm delusional to promise these fruits, because these people have never, they can't, their worldview is so limited, they can't even imagine the possibility of these fruits. Let alone, never mind actually working towards them for years. Spiritual practice is some of the most challenging work that you can do. It's the deepest kind of investment you can make in yourself. And it needs to be done really over a period of decades. You need to have a very patient attitude, a very long time horizon, a very deep vision to access these fruits for most people. Some people are more spiritually gifted, they can do it faster. But for the majority of people who are not especially spiritually gifted, it'll take years and decades. Now you might say that's so negative and depressing. Actually, no. I'm delivering to you a very positive message, is that in 10 years' time, you can experience incredible fruits in your life. 10 years is not that long. 10 years of your life will pass so quickly. And one of the most depressing things that will happen to you is if you let the next 10 years pass without making any investments. And then 10 years will pass, and then you'll realize what I told you 10 years from now on your 40th birthday or 50th birthday. You'll realize what I'm telling you here, and you'll say, oh, fuck. How I wish that I listened to Leo and actually disciplined myself when I was in my 20s and in my 30s and in my early 40s to make these investments. Because now I would be living the high life. I would be coasting off the dividends. I would be living off the dividends. I could do a sort of early retirement, early spiritual retirement, rather than slaving away at this stuff when I'm in my 50s and 60s and I'm getting close to the end. Life really is about investing in yourself very deeply as early as possible and doing it as much as humanly possible. Every single day. This is what it takes to build a great life. Really, you should have been doing it from age 5. Sometimes people ask me, Leo, I'm 15 years old or I'm 20 years old. Is the stuff that you talk about suitable for me, or am I too young? And my answer, in my mind, the answer is always, you're not too young, you're too old. If you're 15, you already missed 10 years of doing this. You already wasted 10 years of your life. If you're 20, you already wasted 15 years of your life. You could basically be like a spiritual master by the age of 20. If you start at 5, if you start meditating at 5 every single day for an hour, you would be an enlightened master by the age of 20. But in our society, in our culture, people are so lazy and complacent these days that they don't even really begin serious development until like age 25 or 30. People piss away 30 years of their life, and then then they come to me and they're sort of like wondering, Leo, how do I fix all these problems? Please help me. I'm so desperate. It's too late. I mean, like, it's not too late, but I mean, like, you already pissed away the prime of your life. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't now invest. Don't make a limiting belief out of this and don't get depressed about this. Even if you're 50 or 60 years old and you just stumbled upon this content and you feel like you've wasted 60 years of your life, okay, fine. You can still, what else is there to do? Do the work. It's like I said, it's better later than never. But are you going to have some regrets about wasting a bunch of your life? Yeah, you will. Because you did. And so that's going to be something you have to work through. So don't be that way. Most of you who watch me are pretty young. I know a few of you are older, and I have sympathy for you. It's not easy doing this work if you're starting in your 50s and 60s. Believe me, I sympathize with you. Personally, I started this work young, and I'm very grateful for that. And that's mostly what I attribute my success to, is that I started investing in my life when I was very young. Basically, in my teens, I was investing in my life. Back in high school, when most kids were screwing around and, horse playing on the playground and smoking weed and going to parties and making out and doing all this sorts of stupid stuff, going to football games, I was busy investing in my life. And today I get to coast on that, and I get to coast on that for the rest of my life. That's very enjoyable. So I recommend for those of you who are young to start investing as soon as possible. And basically wherever you are, start investing as soon as possible. Be very strategic about your investments. Be very disciplined about your investments. Be very committed to your investments. When you know you've got something good, invest in it. Don't be shy about that. Be decisive and invest in it like your life depends upon it. And be explicit about what you're investing in. On a piece of paper, actually write down the top 5 things you want to be investing over the next 5 or 10 years of your life. In your business, in your relationships, with your emotional mastery, with your spiritual work, whatever, your finances, whatever your health. And then paste that on your bathroom mirror. So when you're brushing your teeth, you're looking at that list every single day. And it's reminding you of what you're really invested in. That is what's going to make or break your life. And then, for the most part, everything else that's going on in your life is just distractions. If it's not on that list, it's trivial. It's almost irrelevant. It's not going to really contribute to your success very much. So I recommend you be very deliberate about this. Invest in skills too. That's another thing I've talked about this in the past, but I haven't mentioned it in this episode. But a huge aspect of this is figuring out what skills you're going to need professionally, or even like interpersonal skills, relationship skills, financial skills. What skills you're going to need, and then build those skills. And to build skills, you need to train on a daily basis. I have an episode called, I forget exactly what it's called. I think it's called No Growth Possible Without Training. No growth is possible without training. Go watch that episode. It's one of my underrated ones. But really, it's just, you got to train on a daily basis. The same way that when you want to become an Olympic athlete, you train every single day. That same attitude needs to be applied to spirituality, to your finances, to your relationships, to your emotional mastery, and everything else. You got to train all that shit on a daily basis. If you want to build something great with your life. And when you start doing that, that's when your life becomes meaningful and interesting. It becomes sort of like the difference between just playing a first-person shooter versus playing a deep RPG. One of the most enjoyable aspects for me of playing an RPG, like, Elder Scrolls or something, is that you get to invest in your character. Every time you're leveling up, you're killing monsters, but you're not just killing a monster. Like in a first-person shooter, you just kill a monster and that's it. It's a one-off deal. Whereas what's beautiful in an RPG is that you kill that monster, it gets a little bit of XP. That XP adds to your level. You get new levels, you get new skill points, you get to allocate those skill points, you get new skills, and then that keeps building on itself, and that becomes very rewarding. Where did these RPG game designers get this idea? They basically copied it from real life. But most people are not living their life like an RPG. Most people are living their life like a shallow first-person shooter, where every day they just do a little bit of thing here, a little bit of thing there. It's just like a one-off thing. It doesn't add up and build towards something meaningful after a long period of time. Try to design your life in such a way that every activity you're doing is going to synergize and build towards some larger goal. And in this way, your life will become very rich and meaningful. So you see, like when I'm recording this video, a couple of things are happening simultaneously for me. And I've sort of designed it this way. It's a great synergy. First of all, I'm releasing this video. It's going to get monetized and it's going to earn me some money. That's nice. It's always nice to get some money from your work. But that's not the biggest benefit I get from it. But still, if this video sits on YouTube for the next 20 years, it'll earn tens of thousands of dollars for me, just this one video. So that's pretty nice. That means that this hour and a half that I've invested up to this point to be talking about this is going to get rewarded with thousands of dollars. So that's pretty nice. But also it's going to help many people out there. It's going to help tens of thousands of people to figure out their life. And it's going to add to them building a better life for themselves. And ultimately, some people from this video, from taking this advice, will become millionaires. A few will become billionaires, over the next 20 years. We're talking really big picture. Some people will become enlightened. Some people will experience infinite love. Some people will discover God. Some people will find their dream, partner. Some people will fix their health problems. So a lot of good will be done for society. So that's great from my point of view, building a better world. But also, as I'm talking, I'm practicing and developing my speaking skills. So that's good because that's going to synergize with the next episode. And the next episode, I do 100 more of these. My speaking skills will double, triple over the next 10 years. That will make me a powerful public speaker in the future. That will be very valuable because then I can use that to influence people and make the world even better. And I can also enjoy, the better my speaking skills become, the more enjoyable it is. You see, after 10 years of speaking on camera, not 10, but 8 years of speaking on camera, doing what I'm doing now is the most fun part of my day. It seems like I'm up here working really hard. No, this last hour and a half that I've been talking, in my mind, it seemed like 5 minutes. It's nothing. It's so easy. What I'm doing right here is so effortless. That's what's beautiful about it. On the one hand, it's very profound insight. On the other hand, it's the most effortless part of my day. This is the easiest part of my day, is sitting in front of the camera and talking. That's what happens when you develop high skill in something and you're relatively proficient with it and you're strong in that area. It also happens to be a strength of mine. So, you're building on your strengths. You want to align what you're doing. You want to align the skills you're building with your strengths, not with your weaknesses. So that's happening. Also, as I'm speaking, I'm hearing myself speak, and I'm refining my own internal models of understanding of reality. So every video I shoot helps me to understand myself and my own models better. I also get feedback from people once they post their comments and stuff. That also helps me to kind of correct my models and adjust them and polish them up. And ultimately, that all contributes, every episode I shoot, really, even though it helps you, it helps me even more because it helps me to build up my model. And my model is the most valuable thing that I have in my life. And then this model that I build over the next 10, 20 years is going to become so amazing that then I'll write books based upon it, hopefully, once I get to that point. I already am writing some stuff, but it's really difficult to write it all down because it's so vast and deep and complex. But eventually I'll get it into book form, and I'll use it to make even deeper videos, and I'll use it to make even deeper talks. And so that becomes very rewarding to me. So see, when all of these things synergize in this way, that's when you get the most meaning out of life and out of your work. So try to set your life up that way. Like, for example, most people, when they listen to a podcast or an audiobook, to them it's just like a one-off thing. Okay, I've listened to it. Oh, kind of nice. Okay. And then they just kind of move on. And it's disconnected from everything else that's going on in their life. For me, if I listen to a podcast or read a book, to me, that's going into my model. That's adding to my model. That's refining my model. So it has much more significance than it would to an ordinary person. Also, it helps me to then deepen my videos, deepen my work. It helps me to help a lot of other people. That makes it much more valuable. There are these sorts of synergistic effects. And so what I want you to understand is that this did not happen by accident. I designed it this way. And I'm not saying you have to copy me, because you're you. You have your own unique values, skills, strengths and weaknesses and talents and proclivities and biases that are different from mine. I'm just giving you an example of how you can kind of build your life with these sorts of different synergies. But you have to sit down and actually think about what kind of things will synergize in my life. In the same way that if you're playing a deep RPG, you RPG gamers, all right, and you like to min-max the shit out of your characters the way that I do, what you do, like one of the most fun parts of any new RPG that you sit down to play is, like, before I even play it, I will sit there for a few hours just brainstorming and strategizing what kind of character I want, what kind of classes and subclasses and starting skills, and what kind of strengths and weaknesses. You can usually select these at the beginning of your game. How do I want to build out my characters so that for the rest of the game, all of my skills and characters are going to synergize with each other in a good way? Well, if you're doing that for your RPG characters, why aren't you doing it for your life? Why aren't you doing it for you? So figure out what things you're going to be investing your skill points in. And remember, there's trade-offs. Just like in a good RPG, there's trade-offs. You can't have it all. You have finite time, you have finite resources and energy, and you have finite money. It's all about how strategically are you going to allocate those things. And also, unlike an RPG, where with an RPG, usually you have like a blank slate. You can literally choose any character, any stats, anything. You can kind of do whatever you want. It's a little bit more challenging with life because you're born with a certain set of conditions. So imagine, like, if you started an RPG, normally you could choose to be an orc, an elf, a goblin, a troll, a human, a dwarf, or whatever. You can select one, and each one has their own strengths and weaknesses already baked into that class or that race. But you don't get to do that in life. In life, you're just born as a fucking orc. That's what you are. You're an orc. You can't change your orcness. Or you're a dwarf, and that's what you are. And maybe you don't even like being a dwarf, but fuck, you're a dwarf. You got to deal with it. And so now the question is, okay, I'm a fucking dwarf. I don't want to be a dwarf. I want to be an elf, but fuck, I'm a dwarf. Okay. But I am what I am. Now I got to make, what's the best I can make of this? How can I be the best dwarf that I could be? What skills do I need to synergize? What classes and subclasses do I need? How do I got to allocate my points to become the best dwarf? And when you do all that and you align it really well, eventually what you'll realize is that being a dwarf isn't so bad. And then you'll actually grow to love being the dwarf that you are. It might take you a few decades. Or maybe you were lucky and you were born as an elf the way that you want it to be. I don't know. You know, we're all a little bit different. So you have to customize. You have to very much customize what's going to be happening in your life to what you are. And, you know, part of the challenge of this whole thing is that, you know, in an RPG, it's very easy because, like, you know, you're a dwarf, you're an elf, whatever. It's a clear label. It's a clear image. It just tells you. But when you're born as a human, you actually don't even know. Imagine that you're a dwarf, but you don't even know that you're a dwarf. Maybe it's like that story, you know, what is that goose or that swan, baby swan that was born to a bunch of ducklings, you know, and it thought that it was a duckling because all the other ducklings were ducklings, but it's like a swan, and a swan kind of looks like a duckling when it's small, but it's not when it's big. It's kind of like that as a human. You're born and you're undifferentiated. You don't really know what you are yet. And it's going to take you 20 years, 30 years just to figure out you're a fucking dwarf. And the way you can hasten that process, though, is by doing a lot of deep introspection. The more you introspect, the more you contemplate, the more you study different perspectives, the sooner you will realize you're a dwarf. And then the sooner you will realize the best way for a dwarf to live. And it's when you align yourself with your dwarfness and you don't need to become the best dwarf you can be. You just need to get on the path towards becoming the best dwarf you can be. Just getting on the path and walking the path is already enough to start feeling good about yourself. What really sucks is when you're out of whack so much, you're so out of alignment that you're like, you don't even know you're a dwarf, and you're living like an elf, even though you are a dwarf. And then so you're like a dwarf trying to live like an elf, envying the elf, not realizing you're a dwarf. And then that's when things don't click for you. So I hope this talk has sobered you a bit and has gotten you to appreciate the importance of investing deeply and patiently into yourself. Now your job is to figure out exactly what those investments should be, and then, of course, to follow through on that. It's not enough to listen to this. You got to follow through on it. All right, that's it. I'm done here. Please click that like button for me and come check out Actualized.org. That is my website. That is my brand. On there, you will find the book list with reviews of over 200 different of the best books that I've read in this field that will help you to develop yourself and to figure out a sense of direction in your life. They will help you to figure out who you are and then how to live your life accordingly. Also, you can find the Life Purpose course. Speaking of figuring out who you are and how to live your life and how to align everything in your life towards your dwarfness, that's exactly what the Life Purpose course is all about. It's over 25 hours of exclusive content that is not available on the free channel. A lot of original concepts there in the course that you'll only find in the course that will hold your hand and guide you in a very practical way with exercises into figuring this out for yourself. Figuring out who you are, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and how to align your career and what you're doing in your life with that. You can also find my blog where I'm posting videos, links, resources, insights on a weekly basis. Check that out. It's free. If you'd like, you can support me at patreon.com/actualized. I appreciate your support. It helps me to stay financially independent. And Lastly, you can find my second channel called Actualized Clips that makes this content a little bit easier to digest and to share and to review. I want to warn you that every teacher that you study under, whether it's me or anybody else, is going to have biases. Some of these biases can be very negative. Some of them can be positive. Some of them can be neutral. Some of them don't really matter. But regardless, you're never going to find a human that doesn't have biases. Even if they're enlightened and awakened and all that, they're going to have biases. And the more you listen to them, the more the biases will get baked into you. Their biases will get baked into you. And they will limit your sense of possibilities. And so some of you can overconsume my content, consume all of my content sort of religiously. And then what I want to warn you against there is that if you're doing that, I mean, it's fine to watch all my content. I recommend you do, but you have to also balance it out with other perspectives, with other teachings and teachers, with other books and so forth, because otherwise you're going to get my biases, and you're going to let my biases limit what's possible for you. And that's going to become a problem for you. It's very important that on this journey you stay true to yourself, to your values, to your uniqueness. Customize the things that I talk about to you. Some of the things I talk about are not going to apply to you. Don't try to make them fit if they don't fit. Some of the topics that I cover them from my own personal interests, and my personal interests may not align with yours. So make sure that with my content, the important thing is not that you get hung up on the little details and on the specific examples. The important thing is that you get the big picture, you learn the overall principles, and then you use those not to become a copycat version of Leo, but to become yourself, authentically, fully yourself, while applying some of these broader life principles to help you to do that. Do you see the difference? I'm not trying to create a bunch of copycat versions of myself in you. So watch out for that trap. And as long as you do, then stay tuned for more.